What the actual hell, Square Enix? What are you douchebags over at Japanese headquarters actually thinking? Reading this article gave me a headache, and I can't believe that this is something you guys are actually considering. So before we get into this rant, let's go ahead and pull out my little handy dandy phone here, pull this shit up, and read this, because this is something that needs to be read in its entirety to understand. This is an article from Game Informer talking about the state of Final Fantasy and Square Enix games in general. So here we go. Back in May, Square Enix management said the video game industry is heading towards games as a service model at the time, stating that Final Fantasy publishers will approach game design with a mind to generate reoccurring revenue streams. Now, Square Enix president Yusuke Matsuda has doubled down on those comments, saying in a new note to shareholders that games as a service model is the way forward. Gone are the days in which single-player games were primarily status and multiplayer games secondary. Lately, multiplayer games have taken the lead, and its standards for the game designed for long-term play. Games as a service is not a new concept, and it's a term that is definitely different depending on which company you're looking at. For Square Enix, games as a service means that places a strong emphasis on long-term user engagement. Square Enix will continue to make games that fit this description. The idea is to make games that play for a long time instead of completing them and then quickly moving on. So in doing so, we will increase customer satisfaction and enhance the lifetime value of games themselves, Matsuda said. One of Square Enix's biggest recent games, Final Fantasy XV, is adding online multiplayer through an expansion coming up soon. And just this week, the company announced a brand new shooter called Left Alive, which wouldn't be surprised to learn that the game has a significant online element. The game as a service model makes business sense, as a publisher can continue to sell the game and its related content over time. And providing that the content is compelling enough, it can be a good thing for gamers. Also, in a note to investors, Matsuda spoke about the growing importance of gameplay streaming. Square Enix is looking into how it can turn this into a business to create another form of revenue. An increasing number of our customers around the world enjoy not only playing games themselves, but also watching others play them. You do not actually need to play a game yourself to enjoy it, Matsuda said. Watching the advanced techniques for professional gamers and the unique broadcasts of game streamers is another way to enjoy games. Watching gaming is growing into a major form of entertainment, thanks to considerable advances in online streaming environment. It is a presence of esports spectators that make this meaningful. One of the size of gaming spectatorship grows, gaming itself gains as a value as a form of media. The conversion of gaming into a form of media is proceeding rapidly. We also have a great deal of interest in the field and intend to proactively work to turn it into an actual business. Alright, so where to begin, and what does this mean for Square Enix? Does it simply mean that Square Enix is going to focus more on multiplayer in their video games? That is a possibility. It could potentially mean we get to see more MMOs come from them. It could mean that their upcoming shooter game, Left Alive, is going to feature online multiplayer elements. But long-term service, this is something that I really want to talk about, because this is something that we have already seen come up with Final Fantasy XV. Final Fantasy XV was released back in November of last year. The core game was, at best, unfinished. But here's the thing, let's break down something that needs to be talked about with Final Fantasy XV. We had the Kingsglaive movie, which told the events of what basically happened as the fall of Insomnia. We have Brotherhood, which goes in to explore the past of each individual character and kind of explaining what brought them to the point of the plot in Final Fantasy 15. And kind of how their brotherhood or their relationship with Noctis really started. And if you throw in the one that was included in the little collector's edition of Final Fantasy 15 with Luna Freya, that makes a total of 6. Then we have episode Gladio, that the game directly makes Gladio leave the party, cutting a chunk out of the game to go off and have him do his own thing, only to reunite with the party later on. We have the same thing with Prompto, as he is forced out of the party there towards the end of the game. He goes off to do his own thing after something had happened. We have episode Ignis coming up in December, which again focuses on events that Ignis was away. We have the Comrades multiplayer coming up that takes place during the late events of Final Fantasy 15. I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody who has not played that yet, but let's talk about what that means as long-term service in Final Fantasy doing things. Final Fantasy 15 as a whole, the more and more I realized that here's the cold hard truth. I picked up Final Fantasy 15, beat the game, did most of the side quests, and pretty much did everything that there was to do in that game. Got the Platinum Trophy, played episode Gladio, played episode Prompto, and I will play episode Ignis. But I haven't returned to Final Fantasy 15 to fire up and do the timed hunt exclusives or some of the new patches and updates and bullshit like that they've put in there. Because when it comes to an RPG or when it comes to a Final Fantasy game, I want to play it and move on. I don't want to have to go through and invest a shit ton of time into it because they decide to update it. This is also something that they have continuously shown and done. They're supporting it, updating it, putting more content into this game that relatively is left unfinished. This is not the way to tell a story, especially when your series is known for story-heavy driven games. I shouldn't have to return to a game 6-7 months down the road to all of a sudden get a little piece of the story that really should have been included in the base game. I get DLC. I get adding new content, creating little side things that happen during or before the game, or even sometimes during the middle of it. But to have someone go back through and have a game that you intentionally update as time goes on to create a game that people are going to go back is not a good business model. And this in itself has me worried about the state that Final Fantasy and the state that Square Enix games are going to go further into the past. The more and more I see from Square Enix, the more and more I hear from Square Enix, the more and more I see them slipping down the slope of only caring about the money. Gone are the times of the passionate teams working together to provide gamers with an immersive, unique experience for each console. At this point in time, they're only thinking about their own damn pockets. And it pisses me off, because Square Enix has had such a wide array of success. I mean, you take a look at it in the last year from Square Enix, we have had Star Ocean, Integrity and Faithlessness, I Am Setsuna, Dragon Quest Builders, Dragon Quest Heroes 2, Dragon Quest Heroes that was released in there and kind of put on the Nintendo Switch, I Am Setsuna coming to the Nintendo Switch. We've had Nier Automata, Dragon Quest Builders. If I mentioned that twice, I'm sorry. But Final Fantasy 15, coming from Square Enix now this year. We have Kingdom Hearts 3 on the way next year. I mean, and that Colossus Sphere. You know, Square Enix is showing that they still have so much potential, but if this is the way they're going to handle their franchises in the future, we need to be worried. And us as fans need to get out there and say, yo, Square, enough's enough. Because at the end of the day, we speak with our money. We speak with our wallet. The money we throw at their games is something that we continuously do. And one thing I want to mention, one thing that has me very worried, is the state of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. What does that mean for games in long term with the episodic release of that? How is that going to affect it? Are we going to see multiple updates just adding shit and patching shit because people bitch and moan and complain and gripe and yell and scream that a game isn't the quality that they want it to? You know, newsflash, back when we bought a game during the PlayStation era, PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 even, we didn't have continuous updates to, oh, well, you don't like that? Let's alter this a little bit to try and make it so gamers do like that. When that shit was put on the disc, when that shit was put on the cartridge, that's the way the game was sold and packaged. There was no going back and updating the bullshit and patching that through. And it's sad to see so many developers catering to that bullshit. When the developers released a game, every flaw, every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears went into that product. What was released is what we got. Some of those games were masterpieces that we got. They were flawed masterpieces. There were games out there that had issues that people enjoyed. Why? Because it was simply a game that we enjoyed. It was a game that, for whatever reason, despite its flaws, we could still play it. But you have Square Enix, who has tried to cater so much to their fan base. And I'm just like, give them the bird, Square Enix. Tell them if they don't like your game to suck it. Seriously. I mean, you guys are the developers. You shouldn't have to cater to your whiny ass bitchy fan base because they don't like something that you may have taken that direction in. They are not the developers. They do not see the project as a whole. We are gamers simply meant to experience it. So to create something long-term to make me go back and continue to play it, it ain't gonna happen. It absolutely is not going to happen. And in closing thought, here's the theme. I will pick up Final Fantasy 16. Why? Because it's Final Fantasy, and I'm going to give it a try. But here's the cold hard truth, Square. Any of your games out there, if for any fact or reason that I fire up your game and just one day take a look at this and feel like things have deliberately been cut to make me to continue to go back to the game, I ain't going to play a product anymore. I do not want to feel like things are deliberately left out to prolong the life of your game so you can get a little bit of dough. That's not the way it should work. Absolutely frickin' not. Sad to see a very great company come up with some of this shitty business tactics. And don't even get me started on what they could have potentially meant by profiting off of people watching video games. That in itself just screams shady bullshit to me right there. Thoughts, opinions, leave that shit down below in that comment box. Let me know what the hell you guys think of this bullshit. I'm livid at this point, and I don't know what to say. As a longtime fan of Square Enix, I feel like I'm being stabbed in the back. Thoughts, opinions, down below. Hit subscribe there for me to keep updated with all of my content. And follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Those links are going to be down below in that description box. You guys have been watching The Spoony Bard. Most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. The Spoony Bard is checking out. And Square Enix, screw you.